Okay, it's 7 o'clock. I'm going to call the planning board meeting to order. My name is Kathy Barnard, and this is the planning board meeting of September 21st, 2021. Let me first introduce the members of the planning board, starting over at my left, Susan Replier, sitting next to Susan Von Dugan, and then Peter Goodwin, Mike Hodder, who is the vice chairman, to my right, John Thurston, and next to John is Brad Harriman, and Brad is the representative from the Board of Selectmen, and next to Brad is Julie Jacobs, who is our alternate. Okay, so the first item, there are no public hearings, so this is basically a work session. So I guess we will start through with the items that we all received. And these are basically articles that we're going to discuss again and decide if we want to put them on the town warrant. So that's basically what we're talking about at this meeting. So the first one is Article 2. And Tavis, you want to go through that?
Sure. I'm not going to read through each of them, but you recall at the last meeting there was discussion on the Patty Cook email, and I provided the board some background on how the lighting committee had looked at sources of lighting. This is directly related to that. This first one is essentially, all the language aside, is removing the definition of accessory sign from the sign ordinance portion of the regulations. As you can see, currently accessory sign is defined as any sign relating to a business on the premises, premises on which the sign is located. That goes back to what you might recall me talking about, the little red wagon in the window or the refrigerator in the window or what have you. It's really not clear what an accessory sign is. This is actually the only place accessory sign is mentioned in the sign regulations, and it causes more potential damage than value. So that was the recommendation. So all this Article 2 does is remove the definition of accessory sign from the signage definitions.
Okay, and you've checked the ordinance. There's no other mention of any accessory sign or
Correct.
Anything of that nature?
Correct. Which it was critical to do that because if you look down awning, there's a whole section below that defining how signs go on awnings, what sizes are allowed on awnings. There's an entire section on business directional signs, daily special reader boards, or paragraphs or a series of sentences about each of the other sign types that are defined. What there is no correlation to is an accessory sign.
Okay, all right, questions, comments?
Move to public hearing.
Okay, anybody else have any issues?
I just want to go on record to recuse myself from any discussion on the sign ordinance.
Okay, all right, thank you, Brad. Okay, Julie, you want to sit in on this and
Sure, I can sit for Brad.
Oh, okay. All right, so there's a motion on the floor to move this to public hearing. Actually, we need to move it to hold the meeting in order to then go to public hearing. We need to have a public hearing.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, okay, all right. I was just explaining it. Somebody want to second that?
I'll second that.
Okay. All right, all in favor of the motion to move the deletion of accessory sign from the ordinance to public hearing, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? And that's Brad. Okay. All right, very good. The next one is about the drive-through restaurants.
Yes, at the last meeting, The board proposed adding a definition of restaurant, comma, drive-through, which is a restaurant which, by design of physical facilities, through or to which one can drive, especially to be served without leaving one's car, and adding the words restaurant drive-throughs are prohibited to the existing definition of restaurant.
Okay, so this is an addition to an existing restaurant and then a new definition.
Correct.
Correct. This is as we discussed on August the 17th.
Right.
Kathy?
Yeah, go ahead.
As I was reading this on Sunday, I read it to myself and realized that if we leave the last word as to leaving one's car, we're going to get blowback. Because people are going to say, well, I'm going to drive my buggy up there, I'm going to drive my motorcycle up there, or whatever. I think the word should be vehicle instead of car. That would
Should be what?
encompass all of them.
Conveyance,
If you like that word.
No, we don't do buggies anymore, Travis.
bicycles, skateboards, rollerblades.
I think Julie's idea of vehicle is a good
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah,
That's
right.
what I would suggest.
Right, okay.
You know, the feeling in the world now, if we don't fix it, it's going to be a problem.
My conveyance, like my TARDIS.
Yes.
Okay,
For the record, I entirely support anyone taking their TARDIS to a restaurant.
Thank you.
okay, so any other comments? This is meant to kind of put the drive-through restaurant issue to rest.
Just a nitpicky item, there should not be an apostrophe after drive-through, apostrophe S.
I
Okay,
agree. What the board asked me to do was take the last sentence from restaurant carryout and add it to the end of restaurant.
There still should not be.
I'm doing what I was told. I don't think that's a substantive change. I can change that editorially. That's fine.
okay, so we can change it,
Yeah,
right?
I move that we remove the apostrophe from drive-throughs.
Okay, I'll second that. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, all right. now,
Very good.
Do we want to move this to a public hearing?
So
Did
moved.
that include the vehicle?
Yes.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
moved.
Yes, as corrected. Okay, all right, there's a motion to move this to public hearing with the suggested change to vehicle at the end and the removal of the apostrophe. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? And abstention. Okay. Okay, now Mike and I had both asked for additional items, and I wanted to deal with that first. So if we could just put this aside and go to housing opportunity zones, because there's a decision that we really need to make with a clear head. So
It's a challenge.
we're going to go
opportunities.
to the, this was an addition to the agenda, and I know that there's some time sensitivity here, so
All right. I take it?
yes, why don't you
right,
go
this-
ahead and explain?
You have a handout in front of you. The first side of the page basically tells you what they are, why they're important, and what we should do to get one if we want to. And the other side of the page gives you the text of the statute, so you can read it and be sure that what's on the front page corresponds to what the state authorizes on the back page. A housing opportunity essential, when you can read it, I don't really need to repeat this, but what it does in general is give the town an opportunity to encourage development of diverse forms of housing here in town based upon where the planning board decides to tell them they can do those kinds of developments. The inducement, beg pardon, comes from the Board of Selectmen. The selectmen, if housing opportunity zones are approved, the selectmen can allow a developer a break on the property tax for a period of 10 years, either on reevaluation and or assessment for a 10-year time. That being an inducement to a developer to come in and put up housing, the housing has to include at least 30% housing at 80% of median county income level. Those who are challenged by rents can apply for a housing fund, which the state runs. In order to get a housing opportunity zone, and this is an inducement, understand, in order to get a housing opportunity zone, the planning board has to do two things. One, it has to put up a warrant article asking the town, do they want to adopt RSA 79E4B? And then two, where in the town the housing opportunity zones should be placed. My suggestion is that we do a housing opportunity zone overlay district covering the entire town with the exception of shorefront residential, where it's not likely that affordable housing is ever going to get built. But there are areas in town where housing opportunity zones make a lot of sense, not only areas where there's town water and sewer, which is, of course, the most expensive real estate in town, from shorefront, but also in the outlying districts, the rural and the agricultural districts as well, wherever the state can find, allows a developer to find enough water and an appropriate septic system. So that's what we have in front of us. I hope you've read this prior to tonight so you kind of know what's going on. What I would like us to do is to think tonight about where housing opportunity zones might be placed in town. How does the board feel about an overlay district affecting the entire town with the exception of shorefront residential? If that's the case, then if we have an understanding to that, then an ordinance and an article can be written stating that specifically. We've asked for council to come up with language that would authorize the town to accept 79E or B in its revised form. So we're waiting on Laura to come back to us for that. And that's basically where we stand. Julie, can I?
I still have a question on this. It kept talking about housing units. To me, a unit is one of many. Isn't this for single-family housing? I mean, a single house as well?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It
Because
can
then
be,
then it went on to say a third of all units. So if we have a single home, how do we get a third of
well, you
the?
don't, obviously.
If you were to do a single, typically the projects come as a multifamily and single-family combination. So if you had 6 single-family homes, it would be at least 2 of them. If you had 4
So we're not talking really about a standalone then?
no.
Okay.
It's not the living room becomes affordable and everything else isn't, no.
Oh, but is it for a standalone house? Or is it only for multi-buildings?
Yes. Typically, though, when you look at supporting housing for incomes of the 80% or less of the area median, single-family does not often pencil.
Right.
Okay.
Well,
ahead,
it
Vaughn.
could be some area, and it's not called cluster, what's our zone, where you can,
Open space.
open space development conceivably be single-family homes in a development, let's say, of 100 properties. 80% would be regular and 20% would be.
Correct.
Right, I was just thinking that there's still some single lots
Yeah, no,
around. That's what I
be,
was
yeah.
thinking.
Like in the Harriman Hill project, which has not been able to go through, I understand, if I may be wrong, was anticipating some single-family homes which subsidized rentals too. So that is a possibility, yes.
It's all ownership,
Yep.
the 20 homes.
By adopting the state statute and then by stating that an overlay district exists for housing opportunity zones, commits the town to nothing. Simply says you can do it if you want to. You have to come in, you have to come to the planning board, you got to go to site plan review, you have to go through all the regular procedure, and then you have to go to the Board of Selectmen and plead your case, because every case is individual, and the selectmen will make their decisions based upon each case. Plead your case to the selectmen. I'm going to be putting up this kind of a project. What can you give me in terms of a property tax break. And then the selectmen will do a deal with the developer however they want to do it. In other words, this commits the town to doing nothing. It just gives the town the flexibility to be able to do something that the state has never allowed the towns to do before. I think it's important that we be the first, if not among the first, around the lake to get HOZs approved, because every other town's going to want them too, because every other town around the lake is facing the same problem we are, inadequate housing for the working staff that we need to have here, in either living in town or working in town, taking care of the people who do live in town. So,
Okay, good. Go ahead, Peter. Ron.
I have two questions, actually. What is the current median county income level?
yeah, it won't be the same now as it will be next year.
No,
Right.
I know, but I just was curious. And in 10 years, this disappears, right? In 10 years, all bets are off, the tax abatement goes away, and it becomes regular?
In 10 years' time, well, it depends on how much the selectmen decide to give to the developer. Let's assume it's 10 years. At the end of the 10-year period, whatever abatement the selectmen have given that developer disappears.
So therefore, the homeowners who have bought into that now are responsible for the normal tax rate
10 years.
after 10 years.
Yeah. So it's basically, it's an inducement to a developer to come in, put up a property, and get a tax break. Thereafter, home ownership just takes.
And
This is pretty typical with 79E. Other aspects of 79E are for downtown revitalization. So many communities utilize 79E for preservation of historic properties, where for the developer, it's often less expensive to raise the structure and build a whole new structure. 79E is often used to incentivize preservation, where the developer is then able to pass on the added cost of the preservation, understanding that the tax rate won't increase for 10 years.
Right. We do that in town right now. We have a series of historic barns,
Right.
which are under 79E protection currently.
is there any indication in this bill to say how much the town gives as relief?
No, it's up to the selectmen. They can give nothing, or they can give a full 100%, whatever they feel like. It's purely an inducement to get development into town.
Right.
It doesn't commit the town to do anything in particular.
Then I would end up asking a question associated with, is it necessary and why is it necessary to exclude the shoreline property districts? Because those are never going to be, I can't imagine any particular construction of houses that is going to have, 1/3 of the units that low in price.
No, agreed, and I think there are two reasons to exclude shorefront residential. They're cosmetic. One is basically cosmetic, and the other one is simply an acknowledgement of the reality of the situation. When this comes to the public on the ballot, there will be commentary. There has been in the past. There's always some negative commentary regarding workforce housing. What we don't want to do is to encourage negative commentary regarding workforce housing in particular areas that are potent. Parse the word potent any way you want to. That's why I exclude shorefront residential. I think it'd be an easier sell politically to exclude shorefront residential. It also acknowledges the reality of the fact that it's the last part of town, perhaps maybe downtown might be also a close competitor, but shorefront residential will be the last part of town in which you'll find a Harriman Hill style development go up.
So, I mean, that was my assumption, that it was more posturing, it's more trying to get things through. Or is that going to be something which ends up being an issue for some of the voters? I don't know. I mean, we're going to exclude those people or their properties. And if they don't look to the next step, which says those properties are way too expensive, and it's never going to happen there, is that going to be an issue?
I don't think we're going to be encouraging negative opposition. I think what we're going to be doing is discouraging positive opposition, which is why I would exclude short.
So you're discouraging negative opposition.
Well, what I'm trying to do is not follow down that rabbit hole. What I'm trying to do is, what I'm suggesting that the board do, is to be sensitive to the politics. I think there's more likely to be opposition from those who feel included and don't want to be, and from those who feel...
So you're excluding negative opposition, or
That's basically what I said.
opposition.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, okay, and I think that's a valid point.
Yeah.
At the same time, I think we make, this discussion sort of says that it is not an issue we need to worry about. And so putting some exclusion zone in this, document or the thing we're going to send in front of the public is not something which is going to cause a problem. This is something, to me, which is a very good thing to do, and we just want to make sure it passes.
Yeah, I'm not sure how the warrant article would be worded, but I would imagine it would include all the districts to be included in the overlay district, and SFR would be omitted. It would be, I can't think of the correct phrase, but it would be prominent in its omission. That's what I'm trying to say. People might notice it's not in the list.
Well, it could either be a cumulative list minus shorefront residential, or it could be an overlay to include all zoning districts with the exclusion of shorefront residential.
Depends on how we word it.
Right.
Yeah, I understand.
So the way this is written, though, it's, 10 years following issuance of certificate of occupancy for the project?
Yes.
That implies an apartment building, not a single-family residential development.
This is my wording. This is not.
Oh, it's not the site, state. Okay.
State is on the
Yeah,
other.
the intent behind that is that typically in 79E, as soon as the selectmen start having that discussion, the assessor has to say, this is the current assessed value. That then goes into a contract that becomes held for that 10-year period.
Structure, yeah.
More than one structure.
But you get a certificate of occupancy, one structure at a time.
Okay.
So last time,
Okay,
go ahead,
go ahead, John.
so last time you talked about units in the downtown area possibly, isn't that shorefront residential?
No,
No.
the downtown district is exempt from the shorefront residential.
Okay, so then the next place out is your village residential, because that has the sewer capacity with the water. So outside of that, you're in your rural residential and you just have water access. So are you going outside that parameter?
Yeah, I think the idea, John, is to allow these everywhere, regardless of whether there's water or sewer. But at the same time, and this is important to keep in mind, paralleling crafting these two warrant articles, we're also, Tavis is working on crafting a brand-new housing ordinance, which will take the three obsolete ones we have currently and turn them into one proper one with density requirements which are sensitive to housing needs and to localities. Change the density needs so that we can maybe get affordable housing in the downtown area where there is water and sewer, where the land is more difficult to obtain and parcels are smaller, change density for that particular usage, but at the same time have housing opportunity zones allowed out in the rural residential, out in the agricultural district, where water and sewer can be had by state standard without detriment to the neighbors, of course, where the land is cheaper and the parcels are larger.
Okay, well, that's an important issue, because if and or when we adopt this, people need to understand that the next issue will be adopting an affordable housing overlay, right? And that's going to be done this year.
That's my goal, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Okay.
our housing
Well,
ordinance is,
affordable housing is currently allowed under a set of provisions. Workforce housing is allowed under a set of provisions. What'd I miss?
elderly housing.
Elderly housing. The idea is to say, it's all really an inclusionary housing ordinance that sets up the prescription. So you'd be getting, in the downtown area, it's going to be upper floors. So somebody might be able to put in 3 apartments. One of them is affordable, and that makes sense. If you get out into the rural areas, now you're on 50 acres and you put in 24 houses and 8 of them are affordable. Obviously, the further out you go, the density has to go up because now you're looking to offset the expense of the community well and the community septic system and things like that.
Right.
So who's going to track all this stuff? Who's going to follow the process? Who's going to, when things turn over, who's going to make sure that
You are,
it's,
right here.
The developer's going to have the recipe in front of them and they're going to have to determine. I mean, this is not a free pass to a tax inducement.
so when the unit gets sold and then somebody else buys it, does that happen? Or,
It's in the deed.
right.
so, okay,
It's in the deed for 10 years?
Yes. Many of them actually require that the owner at the time, at the end of the 10 years, has to come back in and close out with the selectmen.
So
There's also annual checkups. Are you allowing people in? Are you still only charging the appropriate rents or appropriate fees for affordable housing? So it's an annual checkup.
And then I just want to make sure I understand how it works. So then after the 10 years are up, the current owners are then subject to the realistic tax valuation and hence very much increased taxes, probably.
Could be. It all depends on the arrangement with the selectmen. It could be, for the first 5 years we're going to hold, then it's going to go up X percent, or X percent of the standard matriculation of the tax rate. So it's not a 40% increase at 10 years. A whole bunch of contractual stuff the selectmen have to
It
figure out.
doesn't have to come all at the same time at the end of the 10-year period. It can come in incrementally over the period of time.
Okay.
So it's not a big shock to the homeowner.
And I'm sorry, what is the difference between affordable housing and workforce housing?
Nothing.
Nothing?
Pretty much nothing, yeah.
Nothing really. It's the criteria for conforming to that equation.
Okay.
Yeah, and our housing ordinances, we have 3 of them. I think the oldest is 15 years old, and then they go back to like around 10 years old. So they simply don't respond to current needs. They need to be revised anyway. So that's a good exercise to do in conjunction with this. This is a novel. This was only passed in June. This is brand new. And so it's novel in the state. I don't think that no other town, we may be one of the few towns that's actually gotten as far as we have. Get this before the planning board to be thinking about doing this.
So a developer would come in, possibly get a higher density in a location, sit on it for 10 years, get maybe a small tax abatement, maybe not even a tax abatement, but they get ability to create larger housing density, which is a lot more houses or units, and then all of a sudden after 10 years, they can cash out and you have all this high density in a location. There's no guarantee it will be workforce housing.
Typically, 79E contract language requires X number of units over X period of time. So the developer not only is saying, I'm going to build 30 units, it's going to be phase 1 is X number of units to be completed by this date. The next series of units to be completed by that date. And the selectmen, through their contract with them, can understand which ones are going to be where on the 10-year scale at that time.
Yeah, but it doesn't even matter if they get an abatement. Basically, they could sit there waiting for 10 years, knowing that they were allowed to build more houses in a small area, and then after 10 years, they can just cash out.
They don't get an abatement until they get a CO.
Right.
So I don't see any density bonus in this anywhere.
It doesn't come with this. This is just establishing the district. If you look into the elderly and the affordable, if X percentage are affordable, then you get X percent increase in density.
In the inclusionary.
So they're not linked
In the
at all.
inclusionary.
In the workforce housing, it's all
Correct.
all affordable.
And
So this does nothing to that. This is
No,
just
this-
10%.
This just says that the
Years.
planning board has looked at it, recommended the following zones to be housing opportunity zones, and then passed the candle over to the selectmen to look at future tax abatement potential based on this program.
oh, and if you turn the page over, have the wording. I don't know.
It's
what
actually,
copy
it's
you have.
actually at the bottom,
The bottom, then, sorry.
bottom going to the back.
You have a different version. If you just read the text of the statute, that will explain what we're trying to do. The other verbiage is Mike Hodder, which is just Mike Hodder. All that this does is allows, well, assuming that the town passes it, it allows the selectmen to give a developer, under certain circumstances, an abatement on property tax for 10 years under certain circumstances. It doesn't commit the town to do anything, and it doesn't force the selectmen to do anything either. But absent this, we don't have this inducement. It's a free inducement from the state. If we don't adopt it, we don't have it. Somebody else adopts it, we don't have it. Their market is more attractive to workforce housing than our market is, because their developer gets a chance at a property tax rebate. We don't. So my suggestion is, again, that we move this to,
Well, we need to see whatever the wording is.
well, that's what
Yeah,
I'm getting at.
Okay.
We move this to ask Laura and/or Tavis to craft a,
I just need to know zones.
okay.
I need direction from the board on which zones to include, and I will come back with the
Then
language,
it's even
ideally by
simpler.
October 5th.
Then I would ask the board, if the board is willing, to direct Tavis to craft a warrant article declaring housing opportunity zones in the town-wide, with the exception of the shorefront residential district,
I do have an answer to an earlier question.
which was,
According to Google, at the moment, the median gross income for households in Wolfeboro is $62,019 a year. Therefore, 80% would be $49,615 a year, or $4,134.60 a month.
It's the county.
Oh, I'm looking at affordablehousingonline.com.
this morning, when this came
So
up,
the county may lower it a little bit, but generally you're looking at $4,000 a month.
okay, well,
This is something that you're going to craft the language. We then have to vote to actually put this forward.
Yes.
So this gives us
Yes.
time for us to think more about it. So I would second your motion.
Okay. Okay, so there's a motion on the table here to basically come up with wording, asking the voters if they want to do this housing opportunity.
I'm looking at doing wording to adopt 79E4B.
that's something Laura will come up with, and us.
Yep.
Right.
But what we're looking at is to declare a housing opportunity zone overlay district. To
Correct.
include all
That's the
districts in
second one.
town with the exception of the shorefront residential.
Right.
That's the motion.
Okay, so is everybody
second it.
clear? And then, as Peter just said, we will have a little more time to think about this and talk about it again at a future meeting.
And any chance we can hear from Brad on this one?
Yeah, I was just, was going to actually try to see if I can make a comment. Just keep in mind too, if it goes through, this comes to the development comes to the Board of Selectmen for relief on this statute here. The abatement on the taxes is only on the town portion of the taxes. It does not give an abatement on the school or the county portion of the taxes that go out in the tax bills.
Understood.
So I just want to make sure everybody knew that, that's all.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have no control over the tax rate assessed by the town, the state, the school, or the county.
So how often are our property taxes reevaluated in reality?
Years.
So this amounts to next to nothing.
It depends. If there are 15 projects, there might have to be a reval more often than 5 years.
Every 5 years, we get a reevaluation. Whatever the tax rate is currently, if the selectmen decide that they will rebate 50% of it over a 10-year period, that's not a nothing. It's not insignificant. I wouldn't mind having that.
That's
Right.
just the town portion, though.
Correct.
The biggest portion is whatever, WRSD or whatever it is.
I think everybody needs to really think about this, because we definitely have a housing crisis in this town and elsewhere, and we're trying to do something about it. So, I mean, and the land use body, which is us, is the one that is going to be the leader in it, and, you know, so I really hope that
And
people will think about this.
the state is doing this now because for several years, New Hampshire has required zoning ordinances to have inclusionary elements, and that's not just an afterthought. It has to be something that someone can just come in and apply for. And as Mike said, the ordinance has been there 15 years for that, 10 years for that, and no one is really doing it. So now the state has said, okay, let's kick it up a notch. Now let's give, you know, a further inducement to try. The state is trying to fix the housing crunch. So the
Right.
way to do that is to get the towns to adopt it.
Right, this is the first time the state has actually been proactive on doing something with statutes to encourage workforce, affordable, whatever you want to call it, housing in towns around the state. Hasn't been done before. It had very wide support in the legislature. Both Republicans and Democrats were behind this. The state recognizes that we have a problem, needs to get solved, and this is one of the solutions to come up with. So we have a motion on the floor.
Okay, motion is on the floor with a second. All in favor of moving ahead with this issue, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, all right, so the next step is up to Tavis to come back with us, and also, I'm assuming you're going to check with Laura?
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay, all right, that's great. Okay, all right, the other, let me just quickly go over the other item that we asked to be on the agenda, and that was our budget. Usually, so, I mean, I'm assuming, Tavis, that this has been gone in and,
This has been submitted to the finance department, and at the end of last week, I did go over this with the town manager, who had no issues with this as presented.
this has gone to the town manager?
Yes,
But you
he is-
haven't gone to the
he's
Board of Selectmen yet?
Correct. No one has gone to, I think I go October 15th or something like that.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so if anybody has any questions, just, you know, take a look at the first page here. You want to
I
just,
do want to note on page 2, outside services,
Yep.
account ending 380. This is the reflection of the town manager's request that $7,500 be put into that line. That would be for impact fee
impact fees?
reevaluation.
When you go to the Budget Committee and the Board of Selectmen, just emphasizes a revenue generator. Once we get this done, that it means we get money for the town, pay off the school debt through the impact fee. We need to redo this. It's money well spent. It's a scary increase, but it's a small amount, and it's going to bring in money.
Okay, anything else that you want to point out to us? Okay, everyone all set with this? Okay, all right, very good. Thank you for that little diversion. Okay, let's see, we got to restaurant drive-throughs. Let's see, the next Article 4 is the sexually oriented businesses. So Tavis, you want to go through that little?
So the past couple of meetings, there's been discussion on the Pine Hill Road Development District about being the zone where sexually oriented businesses would be located if they were to locate. There was a lot of discussion at prior meetings about the inadequacy of the current Section 17553 sexually oriented businesses. So this is functionally what it would look like moving forward. What's done here is deleting 17553 in its entirety and skip ahead a couple of pages and you see a brand new red italics underlined 17553. It should be, sorry, sexually oriented businesses. It says adult-oriented businesses in part because what I did, and this might sound I was more interested in this than I really was. I looked at many towns' ordinances on this. Seabrook had a very good model, Dover had a good model, Durham had a very good model. The one that laid it out in the most straightforward A to Z methodology was Nashua, and this parrots largely what Nashua has. Pieces I had to take out were about obtaining a city business license and things of that sort.
That stuff is out?
Yes. I believe, and I will double check if this goes to public hearing, I believe all the words city have been replaced with town of and things of that sort.
Almost.
I know there's one.
Found one? Good for you.
One.
Where?
53.4
Yep.
F4.
Okay,
It was small, but it jumped out at me.
good.
The reason there's highlighting in 17553.1, there are specific references under 53.1, specified activities 1, 2, and 3. But I felt it was also imperative to get the other definitions that were previously in 17553 into the regulations. They actually come in in a later article, but it will stand out. So what this is doing is saying that such businesses would have to be at least 500 feet from a public or private school, any child daycare facility or nursery school, a publicly owned indoor-outdoor recreational facility, or a church, synagogue, or place of religious worship. Also has to be at least 500 feet from any residential district, and no two such businesses can be within 1,000 feet of one another. When you apply those dimensional restraints, we're not getting overrun with such businesses. Let's put it that way. I know that the language is perhaps more aggressive than people are used to seeing in town, but this is how you have to address certain things if you're going to put regulations like this in place. The first time I wrote one of these ordinances, it was almost 40 pages long, primarily definitions, but
So I'm just going to ask the practical question. If you have to make it so stringent, why do you have to have it in there?
you're not allowed to not allow
Okay.
them.
Yeah.
All right, I asked the question.
Yeah.
So going back toward the very end of this section, one area that this board did not discuss at all, 17553.5D. These are the hours of operation, 9 a.m. to 1 a.m. Monday through Saturday, and 12 noon to 1 a.m. That's Nashua.
Yeah.
Some may say Sunday does not work.
That's fine.
On my,
But can we say,
Sorry?
and Sundays, 12 noon to 1 a.m.,
I was,
9 a.m. to 1 a.m. Monday through Saturday, and Sundays, 12 noon to 1 a.m.? Well, otherwise, it's not Sunday.
why don't we
Well,
make
there
it
is a semicolon after Saturday, and 12 to 1 on
Yes,
Sunday.
because 1 a.m. on Sunday. 12 noon to 1 a.m. and on Sunday is Saturday at noontime to 1 a.m. Yeah,
Okay, I'll go with it.
I have a typo at the top of the page.
I was concerned more about the hours that the board had than the phrasing, but I agree.
Yeah, typo at the top of the page, the second sentence, the word patrons is in there twice.
Where?
Between patrons and
Patrons and employees.
Where are you talking?
very top of that page, above 17553.5, above that is number 8, and the next sentence, end of the next sentence above that.
Patrons and employees, okay.
Or
Actually, I don't know if that's extra.
is that patrons and employees?
Yeah, it's between
Or-
patrons and employees.
So between patrons or patrons and employees.
Between patrons, that's more than one patron talking to each other.
I know.
And
now looking
patrons
at it
and
then-
employees.
So it's only 3?
Between patrons, comma, and patrons and employees.
That would work fine. I would suggest, my personal preference, 175-53-5D, delete Sundays. Be an easier sell, for one thing. I don't think this is appropriate on a Sunday anyhow. They can go make their business some other time. Not totally forget the blue laws, get rid of Sunday.
Even the liquor store's open on Sunday.
That's fine, they can go to look at their liquor stores and do whatever else they need to do, but they can't go here. That's what I think.
So 9 a.m. and 1 a.m. Monday through Saturday.
And the
Period.
employees would have a day off too.
Yeah, and the employees will get a day off.
They're going to clean anyway, right?
They don't think.
Okay, so is everybody okay with that?
Yes.
So to that end, I do want to go back. 175-53.4 is a special detail of things that they need to include in their application. Name, address of the applicant, if the applicant's a corporation, partnership, or association, the application, basically it's a contact person. The address of the owner, if not the building, a description in detail of the business activity, including a floor plan. Written explanation detailing policy for compliance with RSA 571B, that is exposure to minors, exposing minors to harmful materials. So if this is to get voted in, exposing minors to harmful materials will remain in italics because that is the name of the statute. There is no way to italics the italics for this purpose.
That's fine.
And then they are going to agree to actual hours of operation, minimum number of employees, et cetera, through that. How you're going to restrict age. Are you going to card people at the door? Is it this? Are you going to have different areas within the establishment, et cetera? This is pretty detailed.
I think it needs
should
to
be.
be.
Yeah.
It does need to be.
Yeah, it has to be. I remember when I looked into this, all the advice I saw from the feds was if you don't specify exactly what's going on, they'll do whatever they want.
I like the floor plan bit.
Very similar to the car and vehicle discussion.
Yeah, and the floor plan bit, you must have line of sight to everywhere. I mean, it's got to be specified, or else people are just going to go, oh, well, we can just shut that door, you know?
And a couple comments in 175-53-3, locational requirements. The original ordinance specified C2. Should we not specify Pine Hill Road Development District here?
What this is doing is just saying this is the town's regulation. 175-53 is the town's regulation of sexually oriented
Understood.
businesses. The only place it shows up,
Is in Pine Hill Road.
when you get to Pine Hill, it will say under special exception uses, sexually oriented businesses in accordance with this.
Originally, when C2 was written, C2 in the adult-oriented business section, that business was limited only to the C2 district.
You could do that here, but in my opinion, you also do that by only including it as a listed use in Pine Hill.
Would
I
that
don't-
be
I don't think it
adequate
will-
protection? Could they then argue, well, they can't argue because it's permissive zoning. They could always go to the ZBA
And that's for variance.
and ask for a variance wherever they wanted, and it wouldn't matter whether we specified in that case. All right, fine, pass over that one. In 175-53-3, C1, sign design. Can I make it smaller than 24 square feet?
Yes.
Well, first, it's an adult, so I'll catch that before it gets pointed out to me. It could be smaller, but then you are specifying something different for them than any other business, which could be challenged.
That is the standard for, it is, all right, then.
I will double check that number.
It just seemed 24 square feet of here, here we are.
It's only
baby.
2 by 6 feet.
I mean, really,
Mike, that's
really
only
the
2
only
by
part.
6 feet.
Pardon?
That's only 2 by 6 feet.
4 by 6.
4 by 6 feet.
4 by 6,
Math.
that's
Less than a sheet of
substantial-
At 500 feet. That's,
Personally, I don't know if the first sentence is required there at all, because the sign ordinance would already govern the size of a wall sign or freestanding sign. The important part of this is the second sentence, on.
Let's specify it anyway. I mean, the people who are going to be setting these businesses up may need the help to be told exactly what they can and can't do.
But I will double check that, just to see.
It's always a better idea to keep all the sign and stuff in one area and the parking stuff.
I agree.
All right, that's all I had.
Anyone else have any suggestions?
So we can move this to public hearing.
Okay, there's a motion to move this on to a public hearing.
Seconded?
Motion has been made and seconded. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Okay.
Okay, next page, I apologize. Article 5 is a repeat of something you've already voted on, so strike that.
Yep.
Article 6 are the changes to lighting and illumination. Without going in great detail, for those that remember the last meeting, what I did was copy and paste that section of the site plan review that the group wanted in the zoning ordinance and put that into this article. So I deleted everything that 175-53-1 on says. So on page 8 of 17, you see that paragraph A remains as the purpose statement. You skip forward pages, you pick up definitions under B, which is something the board has already gone through.
can I just say it's really nice to have the definitions up front before you trying to figure out these things, rather than finding them out at the end when you're confused? Just a note.
My personal preference would be to move all of these definitions into the definitions,
Yeah, that
rather
would be
than
good.
leaving them here, but that's inconsistent with many other sections of the regulations. But these could be moved to the end, just as easily. But this is where they
Right, we may want to do that. We've
move B to
discussed
the
this
end.
before, but it is sort of a big undertaking.
So we'll go with the purpose statement under A, then move to permit requirements, A and B and C, and then I will put the definitions in at the end of that section. Other than that, I promise, have seen all of this language.
Okay.
How hard would it be to put an article in here that says moving all the definitions from all the various sections to one area at the end?
You'd have to go by each section where there were individual. So for example, 175-53 that we just went through, there's a separate article in here moving those out. You'd also have to do that with this one, which I can do. It's not hard.
Seems like it would be a great thing to have all of the definitions together. Also, you might find that you have two that are for the same thing.
That I don't believe is happening, but I found stranger things. So consensus of the board to move all the definitions out of this into 175, 175?
Makes sense.
Can you have a sentence there saying definitions found, and then where to
Sure.
find them?
Yes.
Because, I mean, a lot of this stuff, you only look at the section you're supposed to be looking at, and you have no idea.
Okay, so are you just going to take the ones that you're proposing tonight and move them? Or are we talking about all?
All of them.
I was just talking about this.
Yeah, okay, all right, yep, fine.
I can go through and give you an idea by October 5th how many sections that could also apply to.
Right. But then it means checking all the definitions.
Correct.
Yeah,
So
right.
what I'm going to do, and what I've heard I'm going to do. I'm asking for clarification. On page 10 of 17, I'm going to take B, definitions, and move all of that into 175, 175. At the end of this section, so at the new end of 175.53.1 will be an appropriately referenced or appropriately sectioned reference to definitions in 175, 175.
Can you put it in the front of it?
Sure, I can put it anywhere.
I'd rather, personally, me not knowing what the frick I'm reading, it'd be nice to say, oh, Article 6, oh, definitions found for blah, blah, blah on page whatever, then read the rest of it, so I know ahead of time.
I might just put a reference at the end of paragraph A.
Yeah, I mean, then I have an idea before I even get into it,
Okay.
Yeah,
where to go for the definitions that I'm obviously going to need.
Def ref, okay.
We don't do it anywhere else. I mean, do we really have to hold our hands that much?
Yeah, because, I mean, I see these guys that have only got 3 pages in their hand, and they just came from downstairs, you know, and they don't know what to do with it. I think
I'd
it
like
would
to
help
see
just the general
whole-
Joe.
Whole zoning ordinance have all the definitions in one place.
I'm going to do this one for sure, and I'll let you know by October 5th what that's going to look like, and then at the next meeting, I can bring them all back with a new article.
Get the housing ordinances done.
That is going to trump this.
I have a question about the exception, accent lighting, low wattage, seasonal lighting, and other fixtures commonly associated with residential uses are not intended to be prohibited in this section. What's the definition of a low wattage?
Christmas lights, inflatables, seasonal.
There are some very high wattage seasonal lights. So you're saying low wattage, what does that mean? I mean, it to me is a definition which may need to be there. I don't know whether it's possible to do that. You have a string of 100 lights.
I can come up with a recommendation. This is what the ordinance says now.
Right. But if we're looking for definitions, what is the definition of a low wattage?
Wouldn't be a bad thing to clarify.
And at the same time, if you put together, 100 1-watt light bulbs,
And a 1-watt LED is going to be different than a 1-watt
right,
incandescent.
and so then it's like, what is that limit? Well, maybe it's fine at that time of year that it's okay. I don't know, but I think there should be
What
some
if it just
definition.
sent accent lighting, seasonal lighting, and other similar fixtures?
Yeah.
Yes, that would be, just to eliminate that verbiage would be probably just a better way to go.
everyone okay with that?
Yep.
Okay.
Hear them?
Following that up. Oh, nope, it's the only place. Okay. I forgot the other section's in site plan, so it's not here. But I'll come back with the same change in site plan later.
This happens to be one which I'm looking at, and it's like, unless people read all the way through to the end, somebody's going to be so upset you're going to take away my Christmas lights or my Halloween lights. And so it's... Oh, well.
Let them.
Let them.
I can honestly tell you in almost 20 years of a job like this, I've never had somebody call and ask if they could put up Christmas lights or holiday lights.
Okay. Onward.
Onward, Article 7.
Do we have to move to...
Oh, yeah.
Yes, I'm sorry, right. Motion has been made and seconded.
Seconded.
Mike and John.
And all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, great.
Okay. Article 7.
Needs help.
Well, it may need help, but the difference here is I, again, just deleted 175.96 entirely, 175.96 entirely, and replaced them with new ones. Because it was getting very confusing to show when the footnotes change, and there was black with italic superscript that was struck out and replaced with the new numbers, and it just became a nightmare.
I've got some additional,
Go for it.
okay, 17596G.
7596G,
Yeah, we agreed to take out printing plant.
I couldn't tell. I couldn't tell if it was to go from
Yeah, it
plan
came
to
out.
plant or to be gone entirely.
Gone entirely. That's what we agreed to the last time we looked at this. In N, this was Julie's suggestion. N should read new and used car dealers, period. And then a new O, which will be the rest of that,
Yep.
with the word shops added after repair. Then in the old O,
Mike, just a sec. Can we put a comma there after automotive repair? Automotive repair, comma, and body shops. They're
Why?
two separate things.
No, there's only two things.
yeah, you don't need a comma after automotive body shops.
You don't?
No.
Okay.
If you had automotive, comma, helicopter, comma, and body shops. But there's only two things in this list.
Okay. And small engine repair.
In the old O,
Old O, new P, correct.
delete the word and, change that to with. So another permitted use with no change to the exterior of the building or parking, period. Delete is required. In P,
P now Q, yes.
whatever,
Yep.
we deleted paragraph D, fuel storage, et cetera. It appears in contractor's yard heavy, quote, parens, doesn't appear here. I would suggest that we put it back in here. I don't remember why it was taken out.
I thought well,
Well,
Because the text is identical in D for contractor's yard under special exception uses. I don't know why it doesn't just automatically appear in contractor's yard light or under permitted uses.
my recollection was 175-96-1C and then DD for both the fuel storage, and that's why those both moved into the special exception category.
Originally appeared under contractor's yard light.
It did.
Anyway.
But I have some clear recollection in my mind that there was no fuel storage in contractor's yard light as the permitted use. I questioned it, and then the discussion was, well, that's the same reason volatile fuel storage is in special exception. Personally, I still do not understand why fuel storage is regulated largely by the state, triggers a special exception in a zone that is specifically designed for this type of use.
Except that we're trying to be careful and cover ourselves and make those who are reading it, put them on notice that we are aware of the necessity of being concerned. Fuel storage.
I can put fuel storage back in permitted uses, I don't mind. I just need the board to agree one way or the other.
I would prefer to go back in because it was in originally.
in the light,
In the light.
yeah,
It's in heavy.
right.
We lose nothing by putting in light, as
Right.
putting it into light also.
So the only distinction then between contractor's yard light and contractor's yard,
This is the same distinction it's always been, the gross
the
vehicle weight.
vehicle size.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
yeah.
If we continue on then, in special exception uses, the only question I had was, we had cemeteries at one time for humans. We don't have cemeteries for humans now.
I had a line through it. There was some discussion about not putting cemeteries there.
Right, yeah, we did have a discussion about it.
We dropped it, the discussion was, we dropped it on the July 31 iteration, and it showed back up again on the August 17 iteration.
Probably because it wasn't deleted between the July and August meeting.
Question is, what do we want to do with it?
But isn't there something about the town can put a cemetery anywhere they want?
You can put a cemetery on your property if you want, as long as it's 30 feet
So-
away from something else.
Is it really needed? That's what I'm getting at.
It would only be needed if somebody wanted to purchase property for the purpose of putting in a cemetery
Private
somewhere
one.
Yeah,
other than the
proper
town.
cemetery for, like, for other people.
Yeah, a private cemetery.
Yeah, well, a public cemetery, private cemetery you can have on your property at any time you want.
Yeah, I'm thinking like Lakeview, privately owned.
So I think that we're trying to at least find a zone for some of these median to intense uses. We should let the cemeteries go elsewhere, where they're more sparse and less volatile to neighbors.
I have no axe to grind either way,
Right.
I have not had the doors knocked down for cemeteries.
so delete them. Okay, we'll pass over on that one.
It's a low area down there anyway. You're not going to be putting cemeteries in,
In Pine Hill Road?
no.
Well, we already got one.
One other thing I do want to point out, 175-96 notes 2. A lot of discussion at the last meeting that ultimately resulted in the board recommending that the seasonal outside storage of items of personal property on residential lots, provided that such items, et cetera, not be listed as a use. And it was a recommendation at the last workshop that it come out entirely. I put it as a note to 175-96C. You see accessory uses with note 2. Because there's some interest in the town in making sure that nobody lives in a camper.
Yep,
So we're keeping the footnotes?
keep the footnote.
Oh, I thought we got rid of them
Move it
all.
out of uses, make it a footnote, just to be clear.
Right.
Just for the board's edification, you're not allowed to have more than one detached living unit on the property, so you can't live in your camper anyway,
Anyway, right.
whether it's under this note or not, but this just makes it clear for people.
So do you want to move this to public hearing?
Okay,
One more?
so you're making a motion?
Nope, Julie has something.
One more?
Sorry.
Continue on, we're on 96-1, go to the second page, under I. It says adult-oriented, and then number A, 175-53- and where, what? An empty space, where,
And where B. That's
so
how,
that's the continuation, okay.
yes. And yes, for all of these, I'm going to make sure that there's consistency between sexually oriented business and adult oriented business. Either going to be an SOB or an AOB.
Listen.
Yeah, that just looks very strange to me. I'm looking for the rest of the sentence.
I mean, you could say 175-53, comma, and where, colon.
So you can't have two next to each other? Is that the idea?
Well, B is not required because it's stated clearly in 175-53. That's one of the separation requirements in the new ordinance. So you could simply say adult-oriented businesses in accordance with 175-53. But this
And make
Why
people,
also
don't we
makes
just
it,
do that?
We already,
Couldn't we just do that?
your new ordinance already prohibits 2 within 1,000 feet?
Correct.
And delete B. Thank you, Vaughn.
yeah, and then people just have to go look it up themselves. Gave them the number.
yes.
Or we can just leave that
A
hanging?
A and B are gone.
they can all wonder, couldn't they?
And where?
And where can we have
We should have
one?
a question mark.
You just put a question mark, yeah, that'd be good.
Really?
No, we can't have fun in this. This is the serious planning board.
Yes, no having fun at planning board.
Okay, so someone want to make a motion on this?
Moved. Move it to public hearing.
Seconded.
Motion has been made and seconded to move this on to public hearing. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, great.
As promised, Article 8, this is simply moving the definitions from 175-53 into 175-175. So all of these terms are already in the ordinance under 175-53. This is just moving them into the definitions.
Move to public hearing, so
Okay,
Seconded.
okay, motion has been made and seconded to move this to public hearing. All in
I'd be in
favor,
favor
please
of
say
moving all
aye.
the definitions.
Aye,
That's coming.
opposed? Okay,
So Article 9, it's just a placeholder for exactly what it says. The board is already looking at moving forward with
voted yes. Heard you.
Bay Street Limited Business District moving into Filter Bed Road area. So when I get into the descriptions, it'll be revising the zoning district. The town, as I've learned very recently, does not have an official zoning map. So all the districts are defined by this extensively long run-on sentence that turns the corner around every parcel. So at some point when I have extra free time, I'm going to sit down and find out where it starts, start each zone around, and then make sure it turns around the new pieces. A very cumbersome way to do it, quite frankly. I would recommend at some point, probably not this year, but actually adopting an official zoning map and cleaning this up. It's much easier for the board to look at the picture, oh, let's turn this red,
Yeah,
and
right,
amend
right.
the map, picture by picture.
I couldn't disagree. I agree that without the official zoning map, it's very difficult for anyone trying to do just about anything, I think.
Interesting things that come up when you read the description, this is getting off topic a bit, but when you read the description of the shorefront residential district, it extends 300 feet from every shore. But our shorefront regulations talk about 250 feet. I had a gentleman call today and said, I want to build a garage, it's 270 feet from the water. Do I need a town shoreline permit? I said, let's just fill one out anyway, even though you're outside the 250, because you are within the 300. They didn't go through the calculations because none of the calculations apply, but I wanted to make sure that every I was dotted and T was crossed because it's unclear. If you go onto the online tax maps that are for reference only, and you look in the Wolfeboro Falls area, and you turn, you know how you can turn on the layers and turn on all the zoning. If you turn off everything and then turn on shorefront, shorefront doesn't go around every water body on the map, but it does by description. So there are things.
Should we change it just to 250?
That's a longer discussion for another day.
I think there's a lot more going on than that, huh?
So we will see text on the Bay Street Limited Business District additions,
Yes.
the housing regulations, and the housing opportunity zones.
Well, you're going to see Bay Street Limited Business District changing, C2 becoming Central Business District.
Yes.
It's also interesting, if you look at the zoning district descriptions, C2 doesn't exist now, but it's on the map.
Well, we don't have a map, so it doesn't matter.
I know, so here we are moving everything out of C2 that by regulation doesn't exist into Pine Hill.
Well, we have TARDISes.
Right.
I think it's a little park.
Tavis, when we move ahead to the public hearing, there's, and I can't think of what the wording is now, but if there's a certain number of voters in the district, then we have to notify each one of them. And is that 100 or?
I think it's 100 voters. They have to be notified by first class or
Right,
mail.
yeah,
Question is, does it affect, I had that note too.
Yeah.
Does that affect Bay Street Limited Business?
It may.
You'll have to check that.
I'll just check the statute and print a bunch of address labels.
and then what about Pine Hill?
It might also trigger that as well, yes.
Okay.
You've got plenty of budget for the letters. It's literally going to be copying this article and, public hearing notice to discuss the following. It's just going to be in a butter notice.
Yeah, okay, all right.
Once everything gets clean, I'm going to suggest a November public hearing. Or do you want to try and do October? We cannot do October 5th at this point. So it'll be either the second meeting in October or November. My suggestion is the first meeting in November.
Why
It
don't
still
we-
gives you plenty of time to have a second hearing if you need. I know it sounds tight, but
Yeah, and I don't think we're going to have any problems with what we've done tonight. Bay Street should be straightforward also.
Right,
Housing regs will be difficult because they're going to,
I think we can get there.
HOZs will be easy. So there's only one I can see on the agenda that might be a problem. If we have a second hearing possible, November 1st.
When we send out the notice for the first one, it will include the alternate date if need be, so we don't have to wait another month.
Okay, what Kathy brought up, the requirement to get special notices out, that will be key.
Yes.
yeah.
All the more reason I'm asking for first meeting in November.
November then.
Okay, yeah, November, yes, right. Okay.
I have a question, and of course, the CBD, Central Business District, has a long history. But is that a series of letters that we should be concerned about because it is associated with a drug? Or is this something we just ignore?
I get it. I honestly never even thought of
That
that.
is, I look at it and
Good thing we don't have a town historic center.
And, maybe it be CBDISC district? I don't know. It's,
Well, insofar as there's no longer a C2, you could just call it commercial.
CBD is legal
it is, it's legal in
CBD, yeah.
some states, not everywhere.
Right.
here.
It is just an abbreviation. It's not like we have a CBD
But
district.
should it just
We
be
could-
the
what about
commercial district? CD?
CBZ.
We don't have Zs, we have Ds.
Ed,
We could have a CBDZ.
I think we should have a THC.
Is there concern at the board level about having the abbreviation be CBD? I think it's actually CBD1. And
I
then
think we should leave it. It's
Peter's been up
it's
to it.
worked so far, we should just leave it.
Okay.
There you go.
I think the time to look at those would be when you're doing the map over, because
Yes.
they're really confusing.
Well, and there are other things that I'm learning. My predecessors did. I don't know what extent this occurred, but what separates two residential districts is the presence of water, town water. And it's my understanding that for different applications, when an applicant came in for something, because there is no official zoning map where the description says has town water, the other regs were used as opposed to what the map showed. All the more reason to actually clarify the zone. Let me be less cryptic. There is a large section of town zoned residential that has no water. And applications come in for single-family homes, and it says right in there, if you're in the residential zone, you have to connect to town water. But there are instances where that parcel is hundreds of feet from water or at an elevation that water can't be provided. So when we get into it's not often an issue. It came up with a new residence on Poor Farm Court since I've been here, and it came up, quite honestly, with the boat museum. According to the zoning map, it's residential. As it has no water, it's not residential.
Okay.
So moving forward with clarifying the districts and actually adopting an official zoning map is something I would strongly encourage. If I can pull it off in time for November, I think it's something the board could adopt rather easily.
Okay, can you tell us what's coming up at the next public hearing?
I should be able to, yes.
At Kingswood Golf Club?
There's a storage building at Kingswood Golf Club. It's essentially a maintenance storage building immediately adjacent to their existing maintenance storage building. Also a boundary line adjustment and a merger. So
Okay.
hopefully October 5th will be fairly straightforward.
And is Taylor Home?
Taylor Home has not yet submitted for site plan review.
Yeah, okay.
Oh.
All right.
At the time the agenda was put together, I didn't have minutes for September 7th yet, so I would recommend the board move review of those minutes to the October meeting. They were sent out after the agenda went out, but I don't know if everyone got them. I didn't put them in the packet. So if the board is ready to review them, have at. If not, I would recommend you move it to October 5th.
Yeah, okay.
I didn't get them. Do you sure you sent them out?
I didn't.
No, they did not go out.
I did not send them
not do
out,
it.
but I saw some copies just an hour and a half ago downstairs.
Oh.
But I'm not sure who has them or received them. So I'd recommend they move forward unless the board's ready.
Okay. Oh, can you bring everybody up to date on the Stormwater Management Committee meeting?
So as the board may recall, I was asked to, well, the Stormwater Regulation Subcommittee received comments from Wentworth Watershed, Wolfeboro Waters, Conservation Commission. Subcommittee then prepared a response to those comments. We then convened a meeting with representatives from Wentworth Waters and Wolfeboro Waters, et cetera, to go over the draft regulations and the response to the comments. The outcome of that was a concerted effort by the commenters that additional meetings be held to draw more parallel between the existing stormwater regulations and the draft regulations. More simply put, many of the commenters understand the basis of the draft regulations being the Southeast Watershed Alliance model, which they had much less concern with than the draft regulations that the Stormwater Committee came up with. So I believe the September 28th meeting at 11 a.m., representatives from each of the groups are going to get together and try and balance the Southeast Watershed Alliance model with the existing regulations to come up with something that collectively the group can support before it comes back to this body.
Okay, and does that include our group? Are
Yes.
we sitting, yeah, okay. Okay, any questions?
Yeah, I was wondering if we should meet before that with our subcommittee and go over anything that we think is a good way to approach the new outlook. And I think we've put in a lot of work, and I understand that the speakers had some good points. I come down to the application. And the application has to happen through this gentleman right here. So when we get a set of guidelines and our planner gives us good examples why the new guidelines fit the examples fit the new guidelines and how they better them, I get back to the application. The application is what the result is going to be. The speakers that came and talked to us had ideas, but what I didn't get from them was a change or a betterment of the application. They just wanted us to listen to different engineers or wordsmith a little bit. We had a professional with us who was very knowledgeable, and the planner and our committee already went over this stuff, so I'm feeling like 7/8 of this is pretty well flushed out because of the application on what we expect when an applicant comes to us and what result we're looking for on the ground. Am I right, Tavis?
There was no specificity from those commenting on the regulations at how it didn't work, other than concern that they were vastly different from the existing regulations.
So just wait to see what they come up with and
Right, yeah.
how much sense it makes on an application basis. Does it really work out on the ground?
And the other reason is this board already went through that document and made many changes, and so I don't want to look at our work here as something that we're just going to throw out.
But the planning board also suggested that we send the regulations to Conservation, Wolfeboro Waters, and Wentworth.
Wentworth.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Get their feedback, listen to what
Yeah.
they have to say, but, planning board subcommittee runs the show as the planning board subcommittee.
okay, so it's 9:28 at 11, okay, all right. Anything else?
Short-term rental committee
Okay,
met and had a discussion yesterday.
yes, I think it was.
Feels like days ago. Anyway, yesterday morning, when everyone was fresh, there was a discussion, and I brought up a section of the noise ordinance that I think was perhaps overlooked. There's a section of the noise ordinance that suggests that not only those partying, but those that authorize partying or production of excessive noise can be held accountable. I'm going to be meeting with the town. So what that means in terms of short-term rental is if you allow your property to be used for a short-term rental and that person is visited by the authorities for noise, I believe the noise ordinance allows the authorities to contact the property owner. I'm going to be meeting with the town manager and discussing that with the town attorney, and then perhaps revisiting with the police commission accordingly. So they have scheduled, short-term rental committee has scheduled another meeting for next month to follow up on the results of that discussion. We'll see where it goes from there.
Okay. All right, anything else? Okay, motion to adjourn?
About the minutes.
Oh, I thought,
I made a suggestion, but nobody made a motion to go one way or the other yet.
Nobody got them.
nobody got the
We got the
minutes.
minutes.
So I move that we review the minutes at the next meeting.
So moved.
Seconded.
Seconded, sorry. Aye.
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 I-
Unanimous.
Pirates. Second.
Okay, well, was that a motion? I'm sorry, but I couldn't hear.
Oh, I move
okay,
that we move the review of the minutes.
Okay, but I don't have the minutes.
That's why we're moving it. I put it on the agenda.
Right, that's, I
I'll get
mean,
them
am
sent
I the
out.
only one that doesn't have the minutes?
No, none of us do.
It was
None of us do.
moved to review next week.
Oh, okay, all right, well, I couldn't hear. Okay.
Next meeting, I'm
All
sorry.
right.
Seconded that, I second that motion that Vaughn made.
Oh,
We all-
okay.
aye.
And all in favor of reviewing them at the next meeting?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, all right, motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you.